Hello everyone, let's continue to paint our beautiful dragonfly. Now before we start today, I thought I would just share with you guys again my wet palette. It really is a paint saver, especially if you are painting in sessions like I do. It's just so easy to dispense too much paint on your palette, and then you have to put it down and go run errands, and when you come back it's all dried out. So I find I have more mixability with my paint if I can put more paint out and not worry about losing the paint because it's going to dry on me. So I've got here just a tear off palette, and I like it because it's already got a little bit of a waxy paper consistency. So if I know I'm going to do a short painting session, I'm just going to work with one color and I'm just going to fix something or do something on a painting, I will dispense it on here and use it up. But if I know I'm going to get into some painting and I might be interrupted, then I prefer to work in my wet palette. So for that, I just have an ordinary, what do you call this, Tupperware plastic container. But the important thing, it needs to have a lid, because you need to be able to seal your container in an airtight manner. So what you will use is just some kitchen towel, and I like to just tear off a sheet of that, and I'm going to just fold it to fit my container. And then I'm just going to use my water mister, and I'm going to wet this kitchen towel thoroughly. There we go. And then I'm going to take one of these tear off palettes, and I'm going to put it nicely on top and just press it down firmly onto the wet tissue paper, creating a nice seal. There you go. And for good measure, I like to just give it another mist, just so that there's enough moisture in the container. So I'm going to move my beautiful plants a little bit to the side so that I can put my container here where I can dispense my paint, and you guys can also see my color mixes. Now where did my... There we go. Alrighty then. Now I know getting into our painting at this stage is very intimidating. Looking at this reference material, it might feel a bit daunting to you. There's a lot of detail on this reference material, but I would like to talk about this reference material just a little bit and just sort of give you my point of view on this whole exercise. You might have heard me say before that this is an AI generated image. I want to talk about that a little bit. I know it's a controversial topic. I do not know where you are on the spectrum of AI. I have spoken about this before, but I would like to reiterate. I believe that any tool in the world, whether it be your cell phone in your hand, cash, a computer, any tool, a knife, sharp instrument, all of these things have potential to be dangerous, but it also has potential to do good. The same water that cooks the fish also nourishes the land, you know. So it really is up to the user to make use of whatever tool is in your hand for the highest good, right? And that is exactly what I'm doing. I think there is a an aspect of copyright where we talk about other people's work. There is copyright on that, and I, as an artist, know how that feels, to have something that you created used by someone else for a total different reason. So I think it sort of was a breakthrough for me personally when AI generated images became accessible. So my team and I have spent an entire day on these images, and we created over, I think, 50 different dragonfly images. And the AI intelligence basically is working on the prompts that we gave it. So we said dragonfly, field of flowers, rainbow color palette. I wanted light in the image. So it wasn't just an image that I pulled off the internet and manipulated. I want to be very clear about that. Every single brushstroke on the reference that I use is 100% generated by my team and I. The only difference is the AI could quickly generate it, where it would take me days to try and create something like this. And something interesting happens with the prompting system because we are able to introduce sort of styles of different artists and sort of bring that into the prompt. That would make it more interesting, visually appealing. There's a little bit more variety on there. So there's a little bit of Van Gogh in here. There's a little bit of a variety of styles that we combined that helped us in the end to produce something 100% authentic and original, and that I can use. And I don't then care to share this with the world in the sense of, here's the reference material, download it, make with it whatever you want, because it was generated by an artificial intelligence with our prompts, and it's giving us something to play with, something to work with, a common ground that we can talk about, like a painting map, for lack of another word. So there are a lot of sort of ideas on here that we can play with, but I'm not now trying to copy this image while we are painting. We're using it as inspiration. So we've got proportion, we've got balance, we've got variety, we've got values. All of the design principles is used to create this image. And I feel empowered as a coach, like I said with the owl, that I have now a tool that I can share with my patrons, and I can take you through a painting journey or a creation journey of some sort with this as our roadmap. And I'm not worried about copyrights or taking something from the internet that inspires me and wanting to share it with you, but I have not got permission to do that. So with this AI generated image situation, it takes all of those legal aspects out of the way for me. It is able to do something for me that I cannot do, and that is to draw and imagine up all of these varieties in one creation that I can bring to the table. My strength as a coach lies in interpreting reference material and using that as a way forward in order to express myself, number one, to have fun, to create something beautiful in the end that will become my own. And each of our dragonfly will look completely different in the end, especially because you have the option always to change anything on the reference material. You are free to interpret it just the way that you want to. You can omit things, you can remove things in the painting that you don't like, that you don't want to do, or you can add more stuff to it if you want. You can change the color story if you want. In fact, one of the things that I'm going to ask you to do is to look at the color of your dragonfly. And I want you sort of to, at some stage, decide which color you resonate with. Do you want a red dragonfly, a blue dragonfly? Because we're going to spend a little bit of time very soon when we get to the dragonfly to just delve into the color, because each dragonfly's color has a different message. And we haven't even explored that yet, so we will get there. Okay, so for today, oh yes, and I've got my little traceable that I created as well. Now I did put a copyright on this because this was created by me. So if you want to create your own traceable, if you don't want to download mine, what you can do is just use a plain piece of paper, take the reference material and a pencil, and what you can do is you can just place it against a window where the sunlight is shining on the back, and you will be able to see the whole image reflect through the paper. And then you can just take a pencil and just outline, the basic outlines of whatever is on that reference material that you want. And if you want to have less detail, you can do less detail. If you want more detail, you can do more detail. So that's how I created this traceable. It is on my link tree, so you're free to download it, print it out and use it. I also printed out a black and white version of the reference material, and the simple reason for that is it gives you a value scale. Now let me quickly dive into that just quickly again. With my color wheel, it's now easy because I can slide this in there. On my color wheel, I have the value scale from 1 being black. So you're able to notice, like on the wings, there are some serious 1 level darkness. In the very corners, it's very dark. So all of the shadows is quite intense. So we will be able to see how deep or how dark in value your color needs to be to give you the depth that you notice here. And then when I turn my value scale to the light side, I'm able to see from the pure white where it is the brightest, where we will use the most white in our mixes, and then all the way into our medium kind of value scale. So a value scale is really important to create beautiful art. It is going to help us to create the depth that is so beautiful in this image. So that is why I print out a black and white. And as we go through the stages of painting our beautiful dragonfly, I advise people to take a photograph of your progress. Number 1, to share it with me on the group, remember? And then number 2, it helps you when you desaturate your color on your edit aspect of your photo. You can then also have a value scale, and then you can see where you need more highlights and where you need more depth in your color applications, and that's really going to be very helpful. So most of the color that comes out of the tube is on a medium sort of scale, unless it's a dark color like this. Let me use another one. Here's sap green. This sap green is basically sitting at a value 4. So if you paint straight out of the tube, you always have a value 4, unless you add another color to it, or you brighten it with white, or you deepen it with black, or something like that. So that's where you're able to shift the value of the color. So you don't need to buy 700 different blues or greens or reds or pinks or whatever. You can buy your main color and then use white and black to shift your value scale of your color if you want to save some money, or if you have a limited painting kit that you are working with. Okay, so for today I want to begin to introduce our horizon line. So again, let me bring my little simple reference out here. This is the horizon line that I'm talking about. Now there is one more. Let me just grab my piece of charcoal. So I basically took this main line, but there's a secondary line just beneath it. So I'm just going to show that on my reference material. And then we have these sort of bushes in the top background that's going beyond the wings of our dragonfly, and that is what we are going to be playing with today to begin to sort of introduce to our canvas. Okay, so I'm putting my reference material aside so I can look at it, and I'll bring the reference material up on the screen so that you can see it on the screen while I create here as well. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, I'm just going to use my white chalk pencil. If you don't have that, you can use charcoal, or you can use ordinary board chalk, or even a watercolor pencil, whatever you have to make a mark with, because it's going to be painted over anyway. And then what I also brought for today's session is some earbuds. It's going to help us create those beautiful dots. And I also brought some sponges. Now these are those latex sponges. They work very well for me. So this green one used to look like this black one. And I just sort of tore little pieces out of it because I like the texture. And we're going to be using that as well. Okay, so these are the tools we're going to be using today to begin to put in the landscape. So we're not painting our dragonfly yet. Our dragonfly is going to be the last thing we're going to do. So we're going to be developing the background and the foreground and the middle ground and the sky and all of the stars in the sky. So that is basically what we're going to be doing. Okay, so let's start with this main horizon line. Now, if you notice, you can also fold your reference material in half and fold it in half again. I like to do that because it's just going to give me a middle point on my reference that I find very useful. Because it's very easy to think that everything is smack bang in the middle. But now that I've folded it, you will notice that the dragonfly is practically sitting on the side of the middle line, so it's slightly to the right. And if you look at where the middle line is, now the middle line is, I just want to draw on here, it's sitting about there. That's the middle of the reference material. So you can notice that this main horizon line is basically a whole finger and a half below the middle line. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to take your ruler and just find the middle point in your canvas. Now my canvas is in centimeters, is 30 centimeters. So I know basically here around 15 centimeters will be the middle. I've got a lot of things in my way. My ruler is very long. I can just put this aside quickly for measurement's sake. Okay, and then roughly here is, I'm just going to lightly draw a line for myself. That's 15. What am I trying to do now? Me and math. I need a mark here. And I need a mark there. That's helpful. Otherwise, I'll draw very skew. Okay, so I've sort of roughly determined where the middle of my canvas is, which is right here. Now, this main horizon line is basically a little bit of a curvature, and it starts a little bit below the middle line. So I'm just going to give with a little bit of a bend. Very lightly, the landscape is swooping down, okay? And just beneath it is a repetition line. And our bushes will basically go up here. There we go. So that works very well for me. So you see how that helps us to place just a foundation of where what is on the horizon. And the minute we have a horizon line on our painting, everything has its space. It will find its space on this canvas. And then we notice our, just for reference sake, our main flower shapes is basically roughly in this area. Here's one and here's another big one. Just to give us a placement of where what will be. Right, now let's go back to our wet palette. And I think what we need to do is I'm going to play with my Prussian blue. You can also use indigo blue. You can use phthalo blue that you darken with a bit of black. Any dark blue that you have will be helpful. I think I might need a little bit more because the sponge can be thirsty. Now I did pre-wet my sponges and I squeezed out all the water. So it's slightly damp. It's not dry. Okay. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to push my little, what do you call this, sponge into my paint. There we go. And we're just going to press it into our canvas. Very lightly. I just want some texture here. So this is going to talk a little bit about these bushes. So it's going to give us some depth, it's going to give us some texture, some organic movement here. And it's over very quickly. So don't overwork it. We want the texture, and I turn my sponge a little bit so that I don't repeat the marks that it's making at exactly the same place. And I go quite high up there on the sides, giving us this beautiful sweep coming down into this basin. There we go. Ta-da! We've done our first little vignette. I call it a vignette. Okay, so I'm going to add a little bit of sap green to this mixture, because we do want a little bit of greens in there as well. I haven't rinsed my little sponge. I'm going to go straight with the blue on there and pick up some green, and I'm just going to press it on the side to get some of that color off. And I'm just going to lightly add, I'm not pressing very hard. Add some green over the blue. And that just gives us beautiful depth, variety, texture. There's some pattern, there's some movement. I like that. Pretty. Okay, I'm going to put my sponge in my cleaning water. Right, so now I think what we need before we do that, I'm going to take my fan brush. Now this fan brush used to be a little bit wider, so you can use any fan brush you have. I just modified it because I always find that it's too wide. It's too much like a fan. So I took some of the brush filaments away on the side. I just cut it off. And I also cut into my little fan brush to create a little bit more texture. So you'll notice that there's a few gaps, okay? Right, let's activate this brush. And what I'm looking at now is this whole sort of grassland or flower field has a lot of greens in it and a lot of texture and vertical elements. It's going to give us that grass-like, plant-like structures, okay? So I'm going to use this sap green and a little bit of that phthalo blue. No, that's not phthalo blue, that's Prussian blue Guinean. Okay. So quite a dark, loosely mixed kind of mixture. I just picked some of this up and added some of that. And I want us to just make some vertical lines. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just want some of these structures to begin to appear. Remember, everything in painting works in layers, and we begin there in the background and we work our way forward. Make some of them longer, make some of them shorter. Make some of them overlap. I need a bit more water to improve the fluidity of my paint. And as I come forward, I make these sort of marks a little bit longer and bigger. And the reason for that is things in the background will appear smaller because it's further away. And the closer you come to the foreground, the more pronounced and big your line structures will be. And when I go into the corners, I will use a little bit more of the blue. So I'm always mindful that my corners must be darker and the center part of my painting will be a little bit lighter. Just going to mist a bit of water in there. So I'm also not trying to cover up my background entirely, but this bit of texture and line work is going to be very helpful later. There we go. Awesomeness. Now it's time to bring out a little bit of an earbud. Just one, I think, will be enough. Oopsie. Okay, just one. How are you guys doing? This is exciting. We're getting into our dragonfly. Let me have a sip of tea. I hope you have something to drink. Alrighty then. Now, I think what I'm going to dispense for myself here is a little bit of white Now where did I put my white paint? Let me just quickly get my white paint. Here we go. We need titanium white. And we need a little bit of yellow. I need to grab my yellow paint. Just give me a second. It's on the other table, I believe. I'm not seeing it in my box. Yes. So I've got here some cadmium yellow. That's nice and bright. Let me just switch my air conditioner on. It's hot, but it was cool this morning. Right. So I'm going to dispense a little bit of my cad yellow and my titanium white. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to focus on these little dots. It's basically a field of orchids, but we don't paint every single orchid. We just suggest it. We start to bring it into our field of perception. So we're going to play here with a variety. I think we must also add a little bit of yellow ochre. So then we have a deeper ochre-like yellow, a bright cad yellow, and a beautiful white. I'm just going to let my reference material stand here where I can see it. Alrighty. So now I think what we will start with is, let's start with the white. I'm going to just dip the toe of my Q-tip into the white, and we're just going to make small little dots in the background. And I don't even always load my Q-tip again. I sort of allow the paint to run out as I get to the other side, going slightly up there. So I'm just sort of twisting my Q-tip a little bit. And the second row of sort of flowers that we see is roughly here. So I'm just moving up and down. There's a musicality to my impressions that I'm making, so that it doesn't go into a straight line. And the minute I'm aware that I'm repeating a pattern, then I immediately try to shift it and change it a little bit. That looks pretty. Okay, so those are the brightest areas. Let's get into the yellow. This one is a little bit closer, so I'm going to play with this now because my Q-tip is now starting to become a little bit fatter. Therefore, these little dots also look a little bit bigger. The ones in that back row needs to be the smallest, so we will use a fresh Q-tip for that. And this is going to come forward all the way down to about here, where our bigger flowers is going to be painted over it. So I really like it when it's a little bit see-through as well. So as it runs out of paint, I sort of fill in some of the gaps that I see. Okay, it helps to sometimes just roll your Q-tip a little bit to just get some of that excess paint up that's building up on the side of the Q-tip. Typical. Now let's get into a little bit of the yellow ochre and just go in between, adding a bit of variety to the design. And if you come into this middle zone, you can really press down and make them a little bit bigger still. Because they're closer. Here and there you can actually make one deliberately a little bit bigger by sort of, what shall I call it, coloring in a little bit of a bigger circle with the Q-tip. But it still sort of gives us a very faded, in the distance kind of effect. Oh, I like that so much. It's pretty. And the closer I get to sort of this line that I started with the white, the closer together I will make these little marks. And it's okay if some of them overlap. I'm going to jump back to my cadmium yellow. Let's rub off some of that paint so that we can get a little bit more of a detailed impression. Try not to cover up all of the marks here that we made of the grass underneath. And I will just go on top of a little bit on some of the white just to bring that vibrancy down a little bit. Okay, that looks pretty beautiful to me. Let's develop the back row of these little flowers up there. In fact, I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to turn my Q-tip to the fresh side, but then I need a bit of a kitchen towel here to just wipe it off, otherwise I'm going to be covered in paint. Okay, so if you notice that top row of flowers in the background is very delicate and small, so try to make very faded kind of impressions, and we tone down a little bit of the white by deliberately pressing on them with the yellow. I'm just turning my Q-tip to give me a variety. I'm going to dive into my ochre And just here and there, go, just make sure that it doesn't feel like everything's in a straight line. Move up a little bit and down a little bit. That looks nice. Awesome. Here and there, above the bushes, are some bright moments. Let's call them fireflies. Let's just begin to talk a little bit about some of those moments. A little bit more white as well. I'm just going to roll my Q-tip. The minute it starts to look like a mushroom, it's a cue to just roll some paint off. And the minute my Q-tip becomes a little bit drier, then I will move up into those upper bushes a little bit, making softer impressions. And this just brings these lines together a little bit. And when I say lines, I'm talking about the reference, the horizon line. Things will be a little bit closer together in the distance because of the distance. I like that. That's really pretty. Okay. So I think for now, I want to bring in a little bit of the verticality with my Q-tip. So I'm going to dispense a little bit more of my sap green. And I'm going to go back to my fan brush. At first, let's bring in a little bit of the ochre into our sap green. That's just going to give us a little bit more of a muted but brighter kind of green. And very lightly, I just want to bring some verticality in a brighter tone down to the central part. That might read like, what do you call it, stems or grasses between the orchids. And remember to go a little bit off your canvas as well, here in the middle bottom. And I'm also going to just dab very gently in there. at the top. Right. Now, I'm going to go back to my little sponge. I'm just going to squeeze out the water. And this is why I have a studio towel handy in case I need to wipe my hands and dry off something a little bit more. I want to bring in a bit of a brighter green to my bushes. So I'm mixing my sap green here with a little bit of that yellow ochre. Yes, and just dab some of it off. And starting here in the middle is always going to be the brightest sort of point. And working our way to the side here, where a little bit of light will be catching the leaves of the bushes. Not a lot, mostly here in the foreground. And I like those accidental sort of marks that my sponge is making. That will give me sort of that vibe that this is structures of, you know, branches of trees or leaves or whatever the case may be. That feels pretty. That feels correct. I like that. Okay. Look how far we've come, people. We've introduced a horizon line. We began to talk a little bit about the textures of the plant structures in the background, the field of flowers in the background, and we started to bring some softness and flower structures into the foreground and some grass movement. So if we compare this with our reference material, yes, it doesn't look exactly the same, but remember that's not the point. It is, however, the point is to derive inspiration from our reference material and interpret it with our own mark making on our canvas. So I hope that you guys will enjoy playing with a sponge and a Q-tip and just some simple color. Allow this layer to dry, and when we come back, we will get into a little bit more of the details. So thanks for watching. Remember to take a photograph of your canvas in every stage of our creation and share it with us on the Creative Heart, and maybe add what you enjoyed most about this phase of the painting and or what you enjoyed least. You are welcome to play the duality game. And like I always say to my clients, the minute you begin to enjoy doing a particular technique or method, you know, that will be beautiful, and you just want to do more of it because you get it. So try not to overdo it. Because remember, this is just background. It's going to fade into the distance. But yeah, you know, when you do something that you enjoy in your painting, and you get to a stage where there's something that you maybe not like and it keeps bugging you, remember not to give too much attention to it. Proceed with the things that do bring you joy, that is beautiful and that is working on your canvas. And eventually, because you're working in layers, it will all come together, trust me. So I'll see you guys in the next episode and we'll take it a bit further. I'll see you then. Bye bye for now.